Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Hello and welcome to Shiny Side Out with
Dave.
And guess what? I'm back, Mecky. My apologies for the last 3 weeks. And I'll tell you what happened though. We are broadcasting live from the Sydney studios in Australia still. Join us in the freedomslips.com chat room. Trying to get in there right now myself. And follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You can get our show notes and all of the links we share with the chat room at shinysideout.net. Unfortunately, .com was taken. Get connected to Revolution Radio another way because it's on air, online, and on your smart device, your digital smart device. If you live in Kentucky, tune in on FM, and you simply have to find WZZR 101.3, WZZR 101.3 old school. Use one of these apps to listen. TuneIn.com. Web Radio Central, Receiver mobile app, Freedom Slips Mobile, TalkStream Live, StreamFinder.com, InternetRadio.com, Radio Tuner, Radio Ways, RadioLine.co, and our very own Shiny Side Out app. We had that made. Dave made it. In the garage. That's right. At home on a Grace tabletop digital radio or driving around in a GM motor vehicle with the receiver enabled radio. These are all revolutions in radio. Very fitting, because this is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. That's right. Now, freedomslips.com is not only a radio station, and you can find out for yourself. It is a central hub for all of your informational needs. The links are at the bottom of the homepage. Tired of the corporate media? This is the place to be. Come and find out what they don't tell you. It's a lot. You probably,
it sure is a lot.
You'll probably opt for the blue pill, I'd say. But hey, take the red pill if you like it. You can buy a CD of your favorite show's 2014 season for $34.95. That's US dollars. Or $39.95. That's $4 for postage and handling outside the US from the station's website. Or you can donate. That's good. Donating is good. And we're looking pretty good for this month. Tell you what. Very nice, but doesn't mean you can't donate anymore. You receive a USB stick or 75K rather seed pack. You just follow the instructions when you're donating. The number to call in if you're in the United States of America, and I do stress, only call in if you have something to say, please. It's okay to ramble for a bit, but then let us get on with the show because we've got some stuff to tell you. And the number is 347-688-2902. Again, the number 347-688-290-2. Or, if you're on Skype like we are, you just add Freedom Screen. One word, Freedom Screen. And just by way of explanation, I was in La La Land in the United States in the last 3 weeks. Stayed with family, unfortunately. I did not get the chance to find a quiet spot to join Dave for the show, and then I was in New York, and I tell you what, the service is not what it used to be. Sure isn't. And I didn't get a room there either. And then I went to LA, and we stayed at Loews Hotel. That's right in Hollywood. We could actually see the Hollywood sign from the little walkway they had. And guess what? No conference rooms for me either. And it's not really a good idea to do the show with my two little girls sleeping 2 meters from my megaphone. Not a good idea. But hey, you know, it is what it is. So I do apologize for not having been here. I know Dave has done a bang up job, of course. What a non-shock that is. I say hi to all of you in the chat room. I can see that we've got a nice place. You've got a few people in the chat room, and we've got lots of listeners, which is brilliant. There are a few things I'd like to share with you. But first of all, Dave, dude, how are you? And sorry to leave you in a lurch. That's a word.
Oh, well, lurch is a word. It's also a person. And you rang.
That's the one.
Yeah. However, it was actually good to get out there. I had the Dave show for 3 shows running,
Nice.
which was also good. I remember that gag being on Hey Hey It's Saturday when someone wouldn't turn up. When there's always a pair of people doing it and one person doesn't show, the other person immediately claims it as their show. I thought I'd do that. It was quite funny. Thank you very much for enjoying the gag. Mackie, missed you terribly. Don't do it again.
I tell you, it was completely unintentional.
Yeah, it's all
I
good.
did try to find. Yeah, but look, I won't. It's
No,
not-
it wasn't something that you planned. So the good thing is though that I was able to call up last week. I called up George Simpson, and
Oh, nice.
he's the lead researcher. If you haven't caught it, catch show 233, and have a listen to that. It's in 2 parts because I broke it at the middle of the show, so I could have a quick chat to him off air, and that also stops the recording. I'm solely working on NBN today, so I apologise if it's a little clippy or choppy. Let me know in the chat room, and my local recording will replace whatever recording goes up in case it is a bit choppy. So don't despair. The archive will have the full version of it. Now, this week I have to just real quick, Mackie. This week we saw the Australian government denying a Chinese company from buying our infrastructure. As far as the New South Wales state power grid, even though it was only 51.4% or something equivalent to just a majority, I think it would have been madness to do that, given that the Australian government's data centre, or one of them, is powered by that same data grid, the power grid, and that if you wanted to know, I made this, and I was talking to someone this week about this, and they said, "Oh, what's the big deal? They own, South Australia's power." I said, "Yeah, but South Australia doesn't have the federal government's, top secret files and data center on it, does it? No, it's in Sydney.
Right.
I know the building it's in, and you wouldn't want to have to run that on diesel the whole time." Okay, so the power grid is terribly important, and it's a military asset, is the power grid, and you wouldn't sell that to anyone. And the chat was that, his explanation was it was a security risk, a national security risk to sell it off. And I agree. And when I tried to explain to people why that was so, they said, "Well, who cares?" I said, if your enemy owned your power grid, how easy would it then be for them to invade you? Just turn off the power.
Yeah.
And then invade. It becomes, instead of a 1-step process, a 2-step process. Turn off power, invade. We can't resort back to candles and gaslight and all the things we might have done a long time ago. So anyway, that was my point on that one. Once again, there's revelations that more corruption. There's and Mackie, I put this out there before, that the children in custody, the awful, what's the best way to put it? The awful treatment of juveniles in custody. The footage itself is from 2013. I believe it was held until after the election. It didn't go to air because of that. And you can only imagine for what reason. Because if the current government was found to have been in power during that, they probably would not have been re-elected, since they sat on all the reports, and it was 7 reports apparently in total that had been sat on. So now they're saying, "Oh, we'll do something about it now. We'll have another coronal, whatever it's called, inquiry. We'll have some inquiries, more inquiries on top of more inquiries that have already been completed, that all found it was wrong, and they should have been corrected a long time ago." But anyway, it just it's one of those systems, Mackie, that it's jobs for the boys. Because who
Yes,
gets
and
employed in
it's-
these inquiries? Retired judges.
That's right.
All the unemployed
look,
judges get work again.
We need a commission. What kind? A royal one.
Yeah, that's right.
No, but look, that's the truth, Dave. And the unfortunate truth here is that a lot of the children abused in these centers are of Aboriginal background, and they seem to be targeted specifically. That has come out recently as well. I think it's unacceptable to treat any prisoner, children or otherwise, like that. But to see,
Yeah.
I don't know how many of our listeners would have seen the footage. It's gone around the world, I know that, but it was pretty confronting to see that kind of brutality of grown men against a child.
It is. It's consistent with what they did, what we've seen in Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, well, Do you see the restraint chair?
Yeah.
That looked like something out of a horror
James
movie,
Bond.
Hostel. You know?
Yeah. And
it's
the
shocking.
Hessian bag.
Yeah.
In Guantanamo Bay,
Oh,
they're
no,
lucky. They get a urine-soaked one over their head in Guantanamo Bay.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But not just urine soaked, but tuberculosis infested. No, but the thing is, the minister defended this, saying, no, we do this so they can't harm themselves. Well, okay, you shouldn't get to a point where conditions are so bad they're resorting to self-harm.
That's right.
But I tell you, stripping someone naked, a child, and not even a teenager yet, really. That's something wrong with that. Like, I don't even have words for this. This is something fundamentally wrong. Okay, you don't. You saw. They put the knee on the neck and they hit them on the.
That's right.
On the ground. 2 guys or 3 guys holding this child down. Little boy. He's a boy, and these are 3 grown men, and stripping him of his shorts and t-shirt and whatever, and then leaving him naked in their room. I mean,
On a concrete floor with no pillow.
Yeah.
No blanket, no
wrong
pillow,
with
nothing. I know.
I grew up in Germany, which has a problem with collective guilt around treatment of people in the concentration camps and all that, and there's a backlash of that now happening, which I expected. But the point is, then, I've seen some pretty horrific stuff as part of just my schooling. It's just what we go through in Germany. So I guess it doesn't happen again. But this, in this day and age, this is not something that happened 50 or 60 years ago, or in the middle of some failed state in Africa or something. All right, this is Australia. This is a first world nation we call ourselves. Really? That kind of violence against children? At this point, I don't even care what the kid did to get in there. Okay, but
Yeah, it becomes irrelevant, doesn't it?
Unacceptable.
Yeah, it quickly becomes irrelevant when the treatment is so awful.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, I know. And look, this is once again one of those other topics that you bring up with people. And remember that phrase, Mickey, that you said, and I've said repeatedly, and that is, if you're willing to turn away while someone's being treated like this, then you accept it. If you walk past someone being treated this terribly, then you accept it. If you stop and attempt to intervene, then you don't accept it. And now, what is it about people today where they feel as though this is okay? And I don't. I think most people go, you know what, if it was my kid, I wouldn't want that to happen. But since it's someone else's, whatever. And that's really sad. It's sad to see that the attitudes are so different. And you're right, being an Aboriginal or being someone that isn't your race, does that make it any more acceptable? Doesn't that take you back to what Meki said before about being in Germany and any time there's been ethnic cleansing on the planet? When does that become acceptable? And it's awful to watch, and I hope it is. I hope you feel as though you've been changed to want to do something about it. I think it's just terrible, and that it includes adults. And I reckon that we shouldn't limit if it's going to be an inquiry, a royal commission on it. It's ridiculous. They should just legislate. No royal commissions or anything. Just say, you know what? As of tomorrow, we've written a law that says you can't treat people inhumanely, and according to these rules, and set the rules out and say this is it, like the UN Charter, like we have one, because You can't do that because we're treating people like that everywhere, as inhumanely as that. But if there was one, that's what they should do, and they should make those rules, and it should be law. And then have visitors that go around an overseeing body that confirms that they're adhering to it. Or you have mandatory cameras that are sending feeds back to a centralized location where they can examine it for wrongdoing.
Yeah.
You know, Meki, when they talked about someone getting beaten up and killed or set on fire, I think recently in a prison, I was appalled at this. And they said, yeah, they went outside of the camera's ability to see them. Why is there a part of any prison where there's no cameras?
Yeah. That shouldn't be. Oh, that's so we can beat you and no one can know with the telephone box. So shut up, I beat you more. There are a couple of things I want to mention to you guys, though. I did spend about 2 weeks, a bit longer, in the States. And one thing that struck me, and don't get me wrong, but it really struck me because I saw it. I went to San Francisco, San Jose, Milpitas, and then over to New York, and I was actually staying in Times Square, and then to LA, and we stayed near Hollywood. But the point that I'm making here is that virtually all people working behind the counter at McDonald's and any fast food joint, right? In supermarkets, and I went to a few as well. Like anyone who sort of worked in this, I guess, I don't want to say unqualified work, but probably where you don't need a college degree. The vast majority, I want to say 95%, were of African American heritage. And guys, why is that? There was a token white guy in one of them, I think, and a couple of Asian guys in another. But the vast majority African American is the divide, the class divide, so strong that the kids that aren't of a white background can't get good part-time jobs elsewhere, or they're doomed to work in the fast food industry. I'm not saying it's a bad job, right? I'm just saying it struck me. It really struck me in the same way that it struck me in Asia. All the old people work in the fast food joints because they have no social security. Yeah, there's the old people. Like where you see kids here in Australia or elsewhere, you see kids, right? Like after school kids or teenagers or maybe college kids. They work in the fast food joints and places like that, or checkout chicks. In Asia, the vast majority of people behind the counter are in fact senior citizens because there's no aged care. In most Asian countries, there's no pension, there's nothing like that, right? If you don't have it, you're screwed, essentially. But it really struck me. But another thing that struck me, people are actually really friendly. People in San Francisco were really friendly. LA, really friendly. Milpitas, San Jose, we got a lot of family there. Really friendly people, and the landscape is magnificent. New York, yes, a lot of friendly people, but I think also a lot of people that just pretty much say, get out of my way. As you're walking down the street. It's a very different kind of city. It smells like Hong Kong, by the way.
Really?
New York in summer smells like Hong Kong. Absolutely. It's just.
And I know why Hong Kong smells like Hong Kong.
The Hong Kong is it's called a fragrant harbor, but not a good fragrance.
No.
Right? So I saw that, and that disturbed me a little. And I could also see, just because we went to a wedding and I saw, like you just observe things, you could see there was a lot of pressure on even jobs that we would consider, not inconsequential, but certainly, not critical jobs. People that work in a restaurant, you could see that everybody was on edge. Everybody was trying to do the best they could, and everybody seemed to work as though they were observed, 24/7 and just about to be fired. It's a really strange environment to just have a look at. We don't have that same kind of pressure in Australia, for better or for worse.
Shh! Don't tell anyone.
Yeah, that's right. I know. But there it was palpable. The need to make money, the need to be at least as good as the guy next to you, ideally better. So that was really very interesting as well. And this was the first time I had gone to the States with my family. 2 little girls. Altogether were 10 of us, so it wasn't easy to get around. But it was a very interesting experience, I can tell you. And a lot of crazy people in Times Square, okay, on 7th and 8th Avenue, which I walked with my brother-in-law. It's really something else. I do I do recommend anyone to go and visit the States. By the way, if anyone asks you, best burger, Five Guys. Five Guys. I know there's a lot about Shake Shack and In-N-Out, East Coast versus West Coast. The best burger I had in the States was at Five Guys. Guys, Five Guys. Great fries, great burger. Really was.
Oh, that's awesome. That is such an awesome thing. I can't wait to see any pictures, Mackie, of it. What else? Well, did you see the 5.8 earthquake we had off Australia?
I know. My mom told me when I got back. Yeah, I said, "You got to be kidding."
5.8.
Yeah, we shouldn't get any earthquakes, you know?
No, there shouldn't be any. And so we're not on a fault. And all the others that they've said have all been mining related. This one's offshore, 5.8. And it shook up the town. I forget the town name. But it shook up the town. It's off Queensland. And what is going on? Why this uptick in quakes? And we did a whole show on earthquakes. And the frequency is increasing, and the seismic rating for the quakes themselves, certainly the big ones are going up, and there's a lot more. What used to be the medium ones, the 3s and 4s, are now gone up to the 5s and 6s. There's something else. Look out for yourself and see what you can see, because. There's a couple of things that are really weird. All of the climate information cuts off at 2014. There's no current climate information. The quakes, you can't get a historical quake thing now off Yellowstone. We're seeing quakes everywhere. And, it sort of worries me a little. Why isn't this public anymore? Why is private the new public? I thought public was the new private. I thought everything was out there. I thought you could do your own research. But you know what? The people doing the research are finding things.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. I think they're turning it off again. So,
look, we know that this technology has been around since Nikola Tesla. We know this. This is the shit pardon my French, that's the stuff that's still locked up, right? This is really making me angry, because we will talk about Nikolai a little bit today, not a lot. So hopefully we'll get to talk to the topic at hand today. But there are a couple of articles I dug up we need to get into, Dave, later on.
Yeah, let's do it.
But it is really important to understand that this technology is not new. Not new. It's just been kept from us, right? Tesla said it's all about frequencies. Give me a certain frequency, I can shake the world apart. These weapons, the death rays and things like that's not fantasy. This stuff is real enough, right? And like I said, we will hopefully get to talk about Viktor Schauberger. We've got about 35 A4 pages of show notes. So there's no way we're going to get through that today. So it's going to be Viktor Schauberger cycle, I guess. But there are two other things I needed to share with you guys first. One is around an experiment that was just recently done. Extremely recently. The article is like 4 or 5 days old.
That's right.
And then the other article is around Hinckley, John W. Hinckley. Sorry, not John W. Hinckley. John W. Hinckley, the guy who shot and tried to kill
Reagan.
Reagan. That's right. He was just released, and the gentleman who wrote a book on I think the Bushes or even Reagan wrote this extremely interesting article, and I think we have to share it with our listeners, because there's a lot of stuff in there. You go, what?
Yeah. So, Mackie, just on the first one. So, last week I brought to light that the physicists have been able to join an electron to a proton.
Mm-hmm.
They've been able to join them together. So we talked a lot and have talked and we'll continue to talk about the double slit experiment, where it shows that a proton or an electron will behave as each other, as a light and a particle. And the double slit experiment also has observational quirks around it, which makes it appear as though it either is doing it in reverse, going back in time and changing its outcome, and or that the observer is actually altering the experiment just by simply watching it, because it changes the probability to 1 from almost 0. Almost. It's a very small number. That's where the probability drive came from. The description of that.
That's right.
All right?
That's right.
And so as you reach the probability of 1, you arrive at your destination, which is actually talking about quantum physics. So, Meki, talk about this. You found the article.
Yeah, look, this article came out, what's the date today? The 20th, 21st, like 7 days ago. It's called The Researchers Orbit a Muon Around an Atom Confirm Physics is Broken. The proton's charge radius shouldn't change, and yet it appears to. So I'll do it as quickly as I can, but it's very interesting stuff, so bear with me, guys. All the tiny, a proton takes up a finite amount of space, enough to fit 3 quarks, a host of virtual particles and their associated gluons. The size of a proton's radius is determined by these particles and their interactions, and so is fundamentally tied into theories like the Standard Model and quantum chromodynamics. We can measure the radius because the proton's charge is spread across it, which influences the orbit of any electrons that might be circling it. Measurements with electrons produce a value that's easily in agreement with existing theories. But a few years back, researchers put a heavier version of the electron called a muon in orbit around a proton. This formed an exotic, heavier version of the hydrogen atom, and here, measuring the proton's radius produced an entirely different value, something that should not have happened. This proton radius puzzle suggests that there may be something fundamentally wrong with our physics models. And the researchers who discovered it have now moved on to put a muon in orbit around deuterium, a heavier isotope of hydrogen. They confirmed that the problem still exists, and there's no way of solving it with existing theories. All right, electrons are familiar because they're a component of the matter we see around us, right? But they're part of a larger family of particles, the charged leptons, most of which are much heavier and quite unstable. The muon is one of these. With a mass close to that of protons and a half-life of only 2.2 microseconds, so that's how long they exist. But beyond the mass and instability, the muon should behave a lot like a run-of-the-mill electron, right? So the muon should be pretty much like an electron. And a large team of researchers has been testing this by replacing electrons orbiting around a proton, creating an exotic version of the hydrogen atom. In the fractions of a second before the muon decays, the properties of these atoms can be measured. The team has focused on tracking the energy involved in shifting the muon between different orbitals around the proton, using that to infer the charge radius of the proton. Their first attempt showed something strange. The value for the radius they got was significantly smaller than the one obtained when you measure using an electron. Remember, the muon and the electron should be equivalent, so there should be no difference. Currently, we have no physics that could explain the difference. The finding had a statistical significance over 5 sigma, which is the standard for announcing discovery in physics. So this is significant enough to be announced as a discovery in physics. Still, it might have been possible to dismiss this as some sort of experimental oddity, or at least it was until the team gathered even more data, pushing the significance up to over 7 sigma. At this point, there was no way around the fact that we have what has become known as the proton radius puzzle, if you want to look it up for yourselves. This may sound like a minor puzzle, but remember that the proton's radius is tied into theories like the Standard Model. So the results suggested that there might be something wrong with our understanding of some basic physics. Theorists naturally responded with enthusiasm and developed some new models that added an additional fundamental force that influenced the muon's interactions with the proton. They had to add an additional fundamental force. That's every day I add a force. Sure, let's add them all in. Okay, now the original team is back with new measurements. Instead of using a single proton, the team has switched to a deuterium nucleus, which has a proton and a neutron. The presence of a neutron should alter the way that electrons and muons perceive the charge of the proton. The team measured the properties of the resulting muonic deuterium to find out whether this changed the proton radius puzzle. It's worth taking some time to appreciate just how hard these measurements are. The muons are produced in a particular in a particle accelerator, which means they're energetic. That's useful because it means they're moving at a substantial fraction of the speed of light, which subjects them to relativistic time dilation and slows down the decay from the reference point of the stationary lab equipment. It's just a bit of relativity here. But to go into orbit around an atom, they have to be slowed down, meaning they'll quickly decay. The authors set it up so that the muons enter the chamber full of deuterium and are brought to a halt. As soon as the detector picked up an indication of the muons arriving, lasers started pulsing, providing energy to shift any muons from the 2s orbital up to the 2p orbital. From there, the muons would drop down to the lowest energy orbital, releasing an X-ray as they did. On average, with the setup in action, the authors would detect 10 X-rays in an hour. Measurements suggested 3 of them were background noise. By measuring the precise wavelengths of these laser pulses that successfully shifted the muons into higher orbitals, it's possible to determine the energy required for these shifts. From there, it's possible to calculate the proton's charge radius. Again, the measurement was different from what you'd get for an electron. Again, the difference was huge. 7.5 sigma this time, well beyond what should be possible as a statistical fluke. The researchers devote a small section of their paper describing this to considering alternative explanations, ones that wouldn't require modifying the standard model. But all of those are much worse than thinking the new results came about by chance, with probabilities against these alternatives ranging from 44 sigma up to 160 sigma. So the proton radius puzzle remains a puzzle. The team behind this new work point to a number of measurements that could potentially help clarify it. Some of them involve better measurements with normal electrons. Others involve scattering muons of protons themselves to see if there's an unknown force at work. The latter would tell us whether anything beyond the standard model will be needed to explain this puzzle. Now, why are we interested in this, Dave? Because it tells us that we don't know everything, and it's important to remember that we don't know everything, guys.
The textbooks aren't closed.
That's exactly right. So we like to keep you informed of these things because we find them fascinating. We hope you do too. And well, if they have to Dave, they have to introduce another force, a fundamental force into physics to explain this. I mean, this comes at the heel of the ether we just discussed, right? And the quantum mechanics.
Let's bring back the ether because it seems to make sense now.
Yeah.
Let's introduce a force because, well, our calculations don't work. So we've got to add something else to times it by because, well, we don't know. And it can be a negative number if it gets smaller.
Absolutely.
Think about that.
I think it is. Yeah, it's hubris. It's complete.
Yeah.
They're
clutching at straws.
Self-defeating, in fact, to be this arrogant. I want to say it's extreme arrogance to say. In fact, back in the 19th century, right? You know what they said, Dave? We know everything there is to know.
That's right.
Nothing new to learn. My head is full. I'm going home. So, really,
and then to discover the whole thing is a simulation. That's funny. Right? Yeah, actually. And
yeah. I do want to share, and I think, Dave, this we should take in turns because it's a very long article.
I like this one.
So I'll let you start and you hand it off to me, sir, when you're good and ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is a very... Now, just to... Okay, this is an author that wrote a book called Family of Secrets, and he was writing about the Bush dynasty, all right? The Bush dynasty. And the gentleman's name, excuse me, is... I'll have to lie to you. All right, I'll have to find his name.
Announce that when you're good and ready, Mickey.
I will do that. So you go ahead, sir.
All right, so this says, Bush angle to Reagan shooting still unresolved as Hinckley walks. And a story I had to leave out of my book is the secondary headline. There's a photo showing President Reagan with the Bush family, left to right, Neil Bush, Marvin Bush, Reagan, George W. Bush, George H. W. Bush, Jeb Bush. They're all pictured together. Why did George H. W. Bush and his cabinet determine that John W. Hinckley Jr., the man who in 1981 tried to kill the newly inaugurated President Ronald Reagan, was a lone nut and no conspiracy, foreign or domestic, was involved? How did they arrive at this conclusion just 5 hours after the shooting without any thorough examination? Mekki, that rings a 9/11 bell to me.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah,
It does.
yeah. Less than an hour after the 9/11 first plane incident, it was terrorists, and it was... Who was it? Iraq, wasn't it? No, was it? Oh, Al-Qaeda. Uh-huh. Yeah, sure. Now, it continues. And why won't the Federal Bureau of Investigation release its documents on the shooter? Hinckley, who was released from a federal psychiatric facility on August 5th after 35 years, remains a mystery. And that's the way the government prefers it. Among the documents the Bureau withholds are those that reveal organisations linked to him and the names of his associates. Another noteworthy individual will not even acknowledge knowing the Hinckley beforehand. The Hinckley, of Hinckley. Someone associated with the shooter's family and even a longer history of dissociation, George H. W. Bush. Most Americans have never heard about this, and even those who have will be intrigued by some little-known aspects. One is the rather unique way the Bush clan has dealt with or sought to dismiss such peculiar situations. And this is hardly the only one in which the family has been enmeshed. Here's an example, an amazing one. Bush Sr., known to family and friends as Poppy, claimed he could not remember where he was when he heard that President John F. Kennedy had been shot. I discovered a good reason why he should have remembered, because he himself had been in Dallas that morning. He was there in Dallas.
How about that?
I know. Wait 1 sec. Mekki, continue.
I learned this is the author, while researching the Bush dynasty for what would become the book Family of Secrets. And by the way, the name of the author is Russ Baker. So we're quoting here from Russ Baker's text. He came upon one odd coincidence after another. Weird ones that would make anyone's eyebrows soar. Now remember, none of this stuff that he's talking about here made it into his book for various reasons. Nobody wants to get sued or killed. He also saw an FBI memo showing that the man who would later become Bush 41, the 41st president of the States, had secretly called the FBI shortly after the shooting of President Kennedy with information on a man he said might be involved. It turned out that not only was the man not involved, but that Bush knew him personally, and even, via a subordinate, gave the man an alibi. So that's all a little odd, isn't it? It's very strange, weird. He also learned that Poppy Bush was a longtime acquaintance friend of George de Mohrenschildt, the mysterious Russian baron who was perhaps the closest person to Lee Harvey Oswald in the year before Kennedy's death. What? Imagine his interest when he learned, this is the author again, Russ Baker, of the Mohrenschildts, that sounds like Rothschild, doesn't it? It's not though. Connections to American intelligence. And then that Bush Sr. himself had covertly served the CIA for decades before being named CIA director as a purported outsider in 1976. So he had actually worked for the CIA for decades before he became director of operations.
That's right.
Indeed. He'd been secretly mucking around with the spy agency before, during, and after Kennedy was killed. The CIA, of course, was later revealed by the Senate's Church Committee investigation to be in the business of arranging the removal or even the murder of national leaders in various parts of the world. And why not in the United States of America? Imagine his fascination then. to learn that John Hinckley Jr., the man who shot and nearly killed President Ronald Reagan in 1981, an attempt which, if successful, would have resulted in then Vice President George H.W. Bush moving up to the top spot, was none other than a friend of the
Bush family.
Bush family. What? How strange is that? Seriously, so strange that it literally caused NBC News anchor John Chancellor's eyebrows to arc as he reported the curious connection. He goes, what? The story was broken by the now defunct Houston Post and then picked up briefly by AP and UPI, the wire services, and some newspapers plus Newsweek. However, then it vanished without a trace or further inquiry or comment, in fact, in the mainstream media. The story was so baffling and off-putting that even the author, Russ Baker, in writing Family of Secrets more than a quarter century later, does not mention it. He was prepared to publish a book with so many shocking elements that the publisher and he worried about whether the mainstream media would even dare cover it or review it fairly. In that context, the Hinckley-Bush connection seemed one provocation too far. I think at this point, people do get disappeared, guys. Dave?
Yeah, accidental suicides too. I like that one. That's the other one. Fast forward to early August of this year. Just been, I suspect. When
that's correct.
News came that a federal judge had ordered John Hinckley released from captivity. I wonder what his next mission is. Hinckley had already been granted partial freedoms over the years, including extended stays with his family outside the mental facility where he had been incarcerated. But now he is effectively out. And I don't mean the other kind of out. He's out of prison, albeit with some supervision. Word of Hinckley's release was met with pregnant silence, including from entities and individuals that bray about law and order, not the TV show, who routinely support jail time with no possibility of parole for all manner of individuals, particularly the poor and unconnected. Neither description, of course, fits Hinckley. That Hinckleys and the Bushes have been friendly for decades, going back to the days when both families set down stakes in the dusty town of Midland, Texas, a magnet for the children of wealthy East Coast families seeking to cash in on the oil boom. The Hinckleys were donors to Poppy Bush's political campaigns over the years. What a connection. And they gave to support the first unsuccessful bid for Congress of the young George W. Bush in 1978. The families lived close to each other. They socialized. And the author saw indications that at one point they may have shared the same lawyer. Even more strangely, Neil Bush, son of the vice president, was scheduled to have dinner with Hinckley's brother Scott the day after the shooting. Now, I knew that one. That's the one I knew of.
Yep.
The shooting took place on Monday, March 30th, 1981. Neil and his wife, Sharon, were to have dinner with a girlfriend of hers who brought along Scott Hinckley as her date. Scott had supposedly been invited to round out the foursome, so there wasn't a third wheel. Neil and his wife, Scott, all lived in Denver at the time. Scott's family's father's oil company, Vanderbilt Oil, had its headquarters in Denver at the time. Scott was a company vice president. Mecky, I'll give it back to you, but
sure.
Denver?
I know.
Denver Airport?
I know, right? I know.
The headquarters?
Yeah, Vanderbilt. No,
Yes.
There's
a larger family connection between the top of this, isn't it?
Yeah, look, there is. Absolutely. And guys, listeners, esteemed audience, you should be aware of most of these connections we're dropping here. If not, go back to our shows, listen to them again. Meanwhile, the shooter, John W. Hinckley Jr., did you notice all assassins have a middle name? Every last one. They all have middle names.
And they also have a catcher in their rye. They have a catcher in their rye in the bookcase.
That's what they do. They can't help themselves. As he lived from time to time with his family in a small town outside Denver. In fact, at the time he shot Reagan, he was living with his parents. This put Neil Bush, the senior Hinckley's, Scott Hinckley, and would-be presidential assassin John W. Hinckley Jr. in close quarters over an extended period. Neil might reasonably have been aware that John Jr. was having serious problems and was in psychiatric care, and given the Bush family's politically driven strategy of tracking and staying in touch with huge numbers of family, friends, and acquaintances, plus a fondness for sharing the doings of the network among themselves, the probability that Neil would have relayed to his parents John Jr.'s mental problems and psychiatric treatments is not remote. In the fall of 1980, that's autumn for us here in Australia, Hinckley was arrested at Nashville Airport carrying 3 guns on the very day that then President Jimmy Carter arrived in that city. He is believed to have been stalking Carter, against whom the Reagan-Bush ticket was locked in combat. He was neither fingerprinted nor charged because, it's okay, he's a Hinckley. Notwithstanding the commonness of guns in Tennessee, once he was in custody, nobody seems to have discovered his troubled background and psychiatric problems, or expressed any concern that a gun-toting non-local was arriving in the same city at the same time as the president. Why would you be worried about that? It's interesting to note that just as Hinckley stalked candidates of both parties with widely differing political philosophies, authorities claimed that Lee Harvey Oswald took shots not only at President Kennedy, but also at General Edwin Walker, a Kennedy nemesis on the hard right. In the late 1980s and early 1981, Hinckley was also stalking the actress Jodie Foster. He said that he had been hearing voices in his head and became convinced that he and Foster had a special bond. Now, sorry, a very quick editorial, and then Dave, if you want to take it further, it'd be great. Hearing voices. Recently I watched Stranger Things. It's a really good TV show if you have time to watch it. And it really goes into the Montauk era and the Montauk experiments. And then, of course, we know that the experiences that Solaris has had. Whenever I hear that someone hears voices, I'm not keen to call them insane immediately. I am much keener to find out whom they had been in contact with, or who their friends are, or if they had been visiting certain areas, because sometimes, especially with artificial telepathy, you can hear these voices and then give you commands, right? The Montauk mind control experiments were in part about that. Okay, now I haven't done any research into Hinckley's involvement, but what we do know is this, and we know this from David Icke. The power families, the Bushes, the Rothschilds, and all those other guys, they actually brutalize their children, from what we've been told, and force personality splits. Not all the children, just some, and compartmentalize them so they can be used for assassinations. They can be used for different things. So I wonder if Hinckley, John Hinckley Jr. It was in fact one of those unfortunate children of the super powerful that was abused in this way, because clearly, if you keep abducting other people's children and so forth, eventually you will be found out. It will come out. Your own children, though, especially if you're powerful, you're much more shielded from that, and you can experiment and abuse them to your heart's content. But sorry, Dave, this was just a small editorial. Please go on.
Oh, well, just to extend that, the psychotronic programming, whether terrestrial or mechanical or electronic or human, is possible. Like Meki said, the Montauk facility had been doing remote viewing, remote instruction for some time. You maybe the whole thing is to get together with the person, find out their frequency, as Tesla says, and and start to program them. Maybe that's the voices he heard. Anyway, it might be the way that it goes. Interestingly, notes by Hinckley's describing a conspiracy to assassinate a president were found in a search of his prison cell. According to Breaking Points, a memoir written by his parents, they said the notes referred only to an imaginary conspiracy, and his lawyers dismissed them as far-fetched. They have never surfaced publicly. I suppose the only reference is that they were in a document, and that's all we know. The FBI declined to release 22 pages of documents that included the names of associates and organizations linked to Hinckley and details of his finances. A jury bought the story that Hinckley's case was strictly one of a deranged individual, obsessed with an actress, and he was found guilty and packed off to the Washington area St. Elizabeth Mental Hospital, an institution with a fascinating history of involvement with the CIA's MK Ultra program. Hello. Which focused, that's an editorial hello, by the way, it's not written in the text, which focused on mind control experiments and efforts to study the possibility of programming killers. Psychiatrists played a crucial role in recruiting subjects for these experiments. Documents on Hinckley's psychiatric records are among those kept secret. Congressional hearings in the 1970s revealed the existence of MKUltra and these mind control programs 5 years before the Reagan shooting. At the time of those hearings, the new CIA director was Poppy Bush. Absolutely.
I mean, seriously, right? I mean, come on, you can't write this. If you wrote this, people wouldn't buy your script. They go, no one is going to believe any of this.
That's right. Doesn't it? Did you not hear it? Did you not understand? I know there's more, but did you not understand?
I know.
Because, right, if Reagan had have been assassinated, then Poppy would have moved into the job.
Much sooner. Yeah, absolutely.
Than having to actually run and do all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. John Hinckley Sr., Jack Hinckley, was deeply involved with World Vision, a non-profit humanitarian organisation that receives heavy funding from USAID. The government organisation that has historically been closely associated with the Central Intelligence Agency. He was close with the head of World Vision's ministries, a former State Department official who worked, among other things, as an advisor in Vietnam. Interestingly, another lone nut, and that's in inverted commas, who changed the global landscape, Mark David Chapman, who shot and killed John Lennon, had been an employee of World Vision. Do you think, Mekki, there's 3 asterisks, do you think that they look for candidates for these roles that they have? Isn't that a good question, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I think you will find that people that are drawn to these organizations have a certain psychological profile. Usually people that do want to do good and help, but they're usually also people that probably aren't as strong maybe of will and maybe easily led, right? So they're probably looking for the, I mean, clearly not everybody fits
but I love
the profile.
The leader.
They're looking sorry, go ahead.
I love the leader.
But they are looking for, that's right. They're looking for people that are fitting a certain psychological profile, highly suggestible, highly influenceable to start with, all right? But they also have to be relatively smart, okay? And ideally, have had maybe a traumatic childhood, looking for a person they can trust in. They're looking for anyone they can I guess have that family connection that they may not have had themselves. So they're looking for these people, absolutely.
Maybe
a lot of these
seeking praise.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
A lot of these organizations have psych tests. You should always worry when your company asks
As
you
a psychometric test.
Yeah, great, to do a psych test, because first of all, they're highly subjective, right? I have never come across a psych test. I did study psychology, and we have actually engaged a psychologist to help with our teams at my work, but this was around job satisfaction. But these are highly dubious and highly open findings. So whatever you find, even if you have a scale. In fact, I read a very interesting book recently, The Psychopath Test by John Ronson, and it's around the psychopath test. Essentially, it's like a scale. It's a scale test that will tell you whether or not you're a psychopath. Unfortunately, of course, quite a few of us display certain psychopathic traits. It's just what you do. Sometimes you're less empathetic, sometimes you're more empathetic. But I mean, everybody will score a score on that scale. Nobody will be a 0. And then it's completely up to the tester to interpret those results. And that's unfortunately the same for every other psychological disorder. There is no hard and fast rule. There is nothing written in stone. We don't know enough. The human mind is too complex to categorize in this way. So that's really where I'm going with this here. It's completely up to the tester to determine who or what you are, right? And this is a really, really dangerous situation. I do highly recommend you guys reading that book, The Psychopath Test. It's written in a very humorous fashion. You might have read some of his other books. The Man Who Stared at Goats was made into a movie. Anyway, so just think about that. Think about that, and really think about the last time you were given a psych test, and why, and what it might have revealed about you. But I do believe we're coming up to the top of the hour.
I've had 3 of them myself, and the first one they told me I was angry. and I said, well, clearly I think the test is flawed. Then I don't understand why I'd be angry. And the second one, the results weren't published to the people, despite asking. I think they just tossed them all in the bin. That was my belief. And the third one, I've yet to be informed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So look, there's the music. Don't forget, take the time to donate. There'll be questions afterwards. It's only a short break, so a quick tinkle break if you have to.
Tinkle away. Tinkle.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it, I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons. Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958, and Studio B is 716-748-0112. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back to David Mackey's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. This is show number 234. That's right, the #1 listener-supported talk radio in the entire universe, as long as you can get the Earth's internet. Crowd goes wild. Since it is listener-funded radio and you like what you hear, please go to freedomslips.com and push the donate button. And if you're in the chat room, it's on the left-hand side. Your donation is greatly appreciated. I mean, I don't think the word greatly appreciated says it enough. I think it's a required practice. If you listen to this station to donate to it, you need to do it, please. I want you to. And it helps run this station, your donations. They do. Mackie and I don't get paid. The money you are giving is going straight to the station. There is a goal amount there every month, and that is what is required to run all the servers, and there's plenty of them. Okay, out there's plenty of them. And as Mackie and I had stated at the top of every show, there's a list of streaming servers, and they have fees. There are link speeds, links that at the station that need to be paid for. And each of these all have a cost associated with it. This is not running for profit. This is a donation-driven radio station, and it's appreciated if you can donate, please. And if you, I think the archives cost $5 or something like that a month. Do that. At least do that. Set it up as a monthly. If you have any other lazy kind of cash hanging around, you can do that. You can pay by check. You can do it electronically. It doesn't matter. But before you do make your payment, have a look at the website. Because on the website, it will instruct you if you make a certain valued donation that you can receive something in return. Really buying something. That's how it works. So whether it's a knife, if you're in the continental USA, or a seed pack, or an EMP-proof thumb drive with survival documents on it, all those things are important. Please follow the instructions. And I'd like to say hello to all of the new subscribers to Shiny Side Out. Everyone who has independently connected to us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Blogger, and all the other platforms we appear on. Welcome aboard. We hope that your journey is a swift one. We hope that you can catch up with our archives. And we also hope that we're both entertaining and informative. And that's our hope.
Not necessarily in that order. Yeah.
No, we want to be informative, but at the same time, entertainment is a secondary option for you if you so choose. If you don't believe anything, hey Mackie, how about this? If they don't believe anything we say, then they'd be amused by it. All right, that could be a form of entertainment for them.
Yeah. If we didn't joke around and laugh and this and that, we'd be crying throughout the entire show.
Yeah.
So you have a choice here. People have commented on this and said, "Oh, you guys are making fun of this." No, not really.
Not at all.
This is the kicker. I don't know how many of you guys have read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I highly recommend it. I read a lot, right? So there's a guy in there who lives outside the asylum. So he lives in a house that's inside out. Okay, so his house, like well, the living room is facing the outside world, and the actual part he lives in is the outside of the world.
Yes.
He says you're all insane, and he decided that he would do that, and he meets our protagonist, through various ways, and he meets Arthur Dent. And he goes, yeah, this is what I've done, and I decided the human race had gone insane when he found instructions or an instruction manual on the side of a matchbox. He decided, okay, this is it. I'm turning my house inside out. I'm going to move out of the asylum. We are in the asylum. And I went to the David Icke talk when he was in Sydney, and he said this. He said, guys, don't try to make sense of any of this. No point. The world is mad. In his British accent, the world is mad. I can't really do it.
You can't do it.
It's not you. It's the world. It's not you. Because he said, you probably, you go around, you look around, you go, this is not right. This can't be right. How can this be? This is just mad. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm mad and I just don't understand what's going on. And David Icke goes, no, it's not you. It's the world. The world is mad. And you know what? It actually is. Yeah. The world is completely insane. If you look at the things that are going on, female genital mutilation, okay, one-child policy in China, organ harvesting of prisoners.
That's right.
And these are just the things we know about in the world. If you travel, and I travel a bit, and you see things, and I see people using the side of the road as a toilet. That's just the thing. I see children rummaging, 4 years old maybe, rummaging through street-side garbage to make a living, while 100 meters on is a Western-style, glitzy-ritzy 5-star shopping mall. This world is completely insane. We are destroying food in order not to affect the market price rather than give it to people who are starving. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. In fact, some of these have now been reversed by the Supreme Court in the States. Yes. You are not allowed to collect rainwater off your property. It's illegal. What?
That's right.
What?
And I wonder who pushed that through, Mr. Nestle man.
Right? Come on, guys. The world is completely insane. The sanest thing you can do is listen to this radio station or read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy if you want, right? But the point is this. Be aware. So it's not you. It really isn't you. It's not you. When people tell you it's you, it's not you. It's them. Okay?
Just remember, and I joke about this with one of my friends, the sheeple. One of my friends who's dear to me said, aren't I one of the sheeple? I said, yes, you are. Do you believe anything I talk about? No, not at all. I said, great. I'm going to bounce things off you. I'm going to bounce ideas and thoughts off you to get your opinion. You are sheeple, and I want to see how you experience them. How do you treat them? What's your thought process in denying that they exist? Because that's very interesting to me, I think. And my friend has been quite a wealth of information. And this is the thing, we always encounter this, and it's people don't want to know. They prefer the red pill, Mickey. They prefer not wanting to know. They don't want to know. They just want their housework, shops, triangle thing to be the only part of the universe, and the rest can be fog of war. They don't care.
Yeah.
As long as that thing's still intact, they're okay.
See, life is hard enough already. So we're thrown into this world, and it's deliberately done this way. Check our hypothesis. Life is hard enough already, and I get that. I understand that, and it's hard enough to make a living and understand what's going on, and just get through life without doing any of the worrying that Dave and I do, thinking about any of the things that Dave and I think about. I understand that. I really understand that. But I'll tell you what, there's also nothing more important than doing that. There's nothing more important than thinking about these things, figuring out what it's really all about. Because you're not here just once, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, right? You can disagree with me, that's fine. You're here many, many, many times. And each time, a little bit of yourself is chipped away, your actual self. A little bit is chipped away. They just work on you every lifetime, start from scratch. You go through the same stuff again. The same stuff. And some of us are born with a splinter in their mind, like Morpheus in the Matrix, the first Matrix movie. That's the only movie that counts, by the way. There's no trilogy. There's only one Matrix movie. Okay, it's just the first one. That's it. And some of us have that splinter. Some of us have this nagging sensation that something is not quite right with the world, and it isn't. It really isn't. It's twisted. It's wrong. Things aren't as they should be. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that we could be living in a very different world. It is okay to live in a world where there are billionaires that don't know what to do with their money, and at the same time have children starve to death on a regular basis. They don't have any clean water. Simple things, the necessities of life. These are not luxuries. Okay? Think about all the things you need for life. This is what you need for life. Air. You can survive without air for 5 minutes. Then you're done. Watch any sci-fi movie with a spaceship. Okay? 5 minutes, tops. That's if you're really fit. Water. 3-4 days. You can go 3-4 days without water if you don't exert yourself. All right? After that, you will start shutting down. Okay? Food. You can go a couple of weeks, probably 3 weeks, without food. These are the necessities of life. Shelter and all that I haven't even mentioned. I mean, you need that, but you can probably live for longer without, shelter, fire, and so forth. But air, water, food. These are the 3 things you need to live. And the air is getting increasingly worse. Okay, in Japan, they're now selling air. So
in a can.
Right? Can air. It's fantastic.
It's like
water.
Like you crack it like a can of Coke and breathe it in.
I know. Water, the second necessity. I mean, my grandfather would have, he would not believe me, I guess, if I told him I buy bottled water. What? Why would you? What?
Yeah,
what?
and the first question he would say, the first question he would ask would be, why is the water that bad coming out of the tap?
Yeah.
And your first answer would be, actually, no, it's not bad. Comparatively in the world, we've got pretty good water.
Yeah, we do, right?
So why do we buy water? Why do every time I take my children out, I come back with a bottle of water for them? Well, why is that?
That's right.
Exactly. I remember being a kid, I didn't drink water for weeks.
Yeah.
Weeks. I had it in my food, you know. I used to drink water straight from the tap with the end of the hose with it without even a hose fitting on it, right?
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Why why every single day you must drink liters of water? They actually proved that to be incorrect, by the way. That there was no single requirement for you if you live in the city where you're basically in shelter and not exposed to the sun and don't have, any extreme temperature differences in your life, that there's really no need for it. Is that crazy?
Yes. Yes, it is.
But yes, Mickey, this is the problem. The problem is we need more water. Why don't we have it? Well, let's put it in bottles so we can sell it. Where does it come from? It comes from the tap.
Yes, it does.
It was proved. They proved it.
And it's a good business when the Coca-Cola company gets into it. And the Coca-Cola company is into it big time.
Oh, yeah.
The first thing they privatize when they go, like there's this thing when a nation goes bankrupt, right? Mm-hmm. The World Bank comes in and the IMF, and they all bring on this all these consultants, and they say you have to privatize this and get rid of all the social programs. Water is one of the first utilities that is privatized, and something that was run by the state that you got for free, relatively speaking, is now charged at a premium.
Oh yeah,
and you go, oh, that makes perfect sense. Let's see the necessities. It used to, there's a song, all good things in life are free or something. Mm-hmm. That song was so not relevant anymore. It's so not relevant because
the best things in life are free. Yeah.
That's it. The best things in life. That's the one. Not true. And then food. Now, food is a whole. That's like a show cycle. What they're doing to the Franken foods that we're gonna eat these days.
Oh yeah.
Right? And
near food.
And we pay premium to eat food that is natural food, something that your grandparents would have had as a matter of course, right?
And Meki, to top that about food, it is now a psychological name that you can be determined by a scientist when you prefer to eat real food. Mm-hmm. There's actually a condition that you can be classified as.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right.
Why should that be? You just want to be healthy and eat real food. Oh, no, you can't do that. There's something wrong with you, and it's called this.
Yes, and the reason that happens, and then look, we'll get into the article in a second. I don't think we'll do a lot of Viktor Schauberger today.
No.
But the mental sickness industry that is now holding sway in especially the Western world, Europe, America, Australia, is classifying everything. Before, in the olden days, there weren't very many children diagnosed with autism. Now, there's actually a reason for that. Now, I'm not saying that vaccines are awesome, and I'm not saying that, I'm not saying either way, but my children are being vaccinated, and that's my personal choice, and that's your house, because I was vaccinated, and I've seen the effects of non-vaccination as well. So, but this, to the side. So there are clearly there's some issues with vaccines. That I will not deny that. But the reason we have more autism spectrum disease diagnoses is because the actual diagnosis tools or the diagnostic tools, the definitions have gotten a lot broader. A lot of things that would not have been called autism are now being called autism.
Like the term on spectrum.
Yes, exactly.
No longer were you at the extreme end and visibly and noticeably autistic. But now the spectrum includes, very mild. In fact, so mild you wouldn't know. In fact, if you were to test any of the famous people, the high-flying people, the people at the top of organizations, Mick, you know where you're going with this, that they would come up positive and on spectrum. Now,
that's right.
They would.
That's exactly right. So we have changed. This is something that happened in the 60s and 70s. We've changed the definition of mental illnesses. And we did it, and again, I urge you to do your own research into this. It's fascinating. We did it because we wanted to take the human error out of it. So we created these lists, we created these checklists, right? And these are quite comprehensive. I'm not saying that, but they are limited, and they're created by us, people, and we cannot account for everything, right? So someone is a paranoid schizophrenic. What does that mean? There is no single definition of what I just said. It doesn't exist. Someone is autistic. What does that mean? It doesn't exist. There's no single definition of what it means. Someone is a psychopath. No single definition. There's only a spectrum of behaviors. And in fact, most psychiatrists wouldn't even necessarily agree with the testing that's been done. Not only that, though, once you're diagnosed as something, that's it. You're that. That's what you are.
You don't get
because
off
there's
the
no
list.
way to prove. You can't prove otherwise because it's so broad. Once you've been diagnosed as a psychopath or an autistic child or whatever, schizophrenic, that's who you are. And you better take your meds because they'll lock you up if you don't.
Yeah.
That's the danger as well. So, sorry to digress here a little, but these are important things, guys, right?
I think it's sort of on topic anyway, because we're talking about not mental illness, but people certainly, as B. Rady said in the chat room, that the two killers, the two assassins, or attempted assassins, which was Hinckley Jr. and what was the other fellow? Chapman. Yes, were both found with a copy of A Catcher in the Rye, like I jokingly mentioned near the end of the show.
It's true, though.
It is true.
It's true, though.
Yeah, completely. And in fact, if you do the research, you'll see that A Catcher in the Rye is in the bookshelf of all of them.
Yes.
And, it makes me want to go out and buy it.
I had to read it as part of my school curriculum. So
No.
Uh-oh. And that's the name. Uh-oh.
I never knew that, Mackie. That's the end. Now you've got a label. I wonder what we can call it. What can the acronym be? A Catcher in the Rye. It doesn't. It's not poetic. I think we have to fix that. So, where were we up to? We're talking about
the three asterisks.
Yeah, okay. So we're talking about, this is, if you've just caught up with us, we're discussing the Bush and Hinckley connections to do with the Reagan shooting and how the families were meshed together in both location and in a social manner as well as business.
Yep.
And also how it's the Montauk facilities and the CIA were connected also with the psychiatric the establishment that Hinckley Jr. was incarcerated in for was it 30 years, Mackie? 35 years? 35 years that he was incarcerated. There's connections going to that as well. So it may all be part and parcel of the same thing. And now that he's been released, I've got a question, is, does he have a new role to play?
Possibly.
You have to think about this, whether it's Hitlery or Trump. Will he be employed to take out one of them? I mean, that's a question I'm only asking. Anyway, getting back to the text, Vice President Bush seems never to have personally commented on his connections with the Hinkleys in a typical non-response, which the author noted in Family of Secrets is a Bush family tactic in dealing with sensitive information. A Bush aide, Press Secretary Peter Thiele, told a UPI reporter the day after the arrest of Hinckley Jr., this would be, he says, and quoted as, "I don't know a damn thing about it. All I know is what you're telling me." Of course, the issue was not what the British-born Thiele knew. It was what his boss knew. Asked whether Bush had mentioned knowing the Hinckleys, Thiele replied that the Veep, Mecky?
Veep, yep.
Yep, made no mention of it whatsoever, end quote. So there we have it. No actual
Veep is the
comment.
vice president.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there we have it. No actual comment from Poppy Bush himself. Neil Bush, at a press conference the day after the shooting, yet again, same day, did admit to one connection with the Hinckleys. He mentioned in passing that Scott Hinckley had also been at his house a couple of months earlier at his surprise birthday party, of all times. Ostensibly, he was there as the date of the same close female friend who was scheduled to dine with the Bushes the day after the shooting. So he'd been there some months earlier, probably, if the conspiracy is correct, this is an aside to the text, on his preparation of the mission. You don't know. Maggie.
Yeah, maybe his brother was his handler. Anyway, the apparent use of the woman friend of Sharon Bush to explain any connection between the families, despite an already existing direct connection between the families, warranted more attention. This was again a typical pattern that the author had noted with the Bushes. Stress another person, in this case the female friend, as if she were the only connection between the Bushes and the Hinckleys, thereby diverting attention from the central fact. The Bushes and Hinckleys were themselves longtime friends. Neil did claim he had never met the gunman or the gunman's father, a claim that would be hard to disprove and that would in any case hardly matter given the family-to-family connections. In any event, no evidence has ever surfaced that any of the Bushes were so much as questioned about their relationship to the Hinckleys by the FBI, Secret Service, or any other entity. And no investigation, informal or formal, appears to have taken place. Which, and sorry, this is an editorial, which I find astonishing. I find it astonishing. You sneeze the word bomb at the airport, they lock you up forever. If you have a connection to the shooter, a family connection to the shooter, and you're not being investigated, I think that's amazing. It's, again, Hillary Clinton, right? One rule for her, another rule for everybody else. Anyway, meanwhile, the media's focus was on the highly unpopular Secretary of State, Alexander Haig, you might remember him, whose statement that I'm in charge here in the minutes after Reagan's shooting was turned into a meme that he is remembered to this day, despite the fact that Haig had merely stated that he was in charge as the third in succession, pending the return of the vice president and in close touch with him. Thus, the Haig story became a sensation and successfully distracted just about everyone from the weird Bush-Hinckley connection.
Distraction is the first method. Is the first method that is used.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Why has Hitler not been indicted or imprisoned for deleting emails
or
misleading the public?
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. One rule for them, one rule for us.
And if you do your research, you'll find there's a definition for that, and it's a feudal system, F-E-U-D-A-L, feudal. Feudal means that the top echelon of your society has immunity to any laws at all. No criminal proceedings, nothing. They're above the law. That's what it means. Mm-hmm. And then below is everybody else.
Yes.
And this, we've seen a return to the feudal system where highly prominent, high up people are no longer, before, like in the 80s, Mickey, you could get away with something by having a high priced lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, OJ, if you're listening. But now you're just not even pursued. What's going on with that? I don't understand how this can be acceptable behaviour.
I know.
Our Prime Minister was in the Panama Papers. Anything he ever said? No, that's it. No, it was a long time ago. Don't worry about it. What do you mean don't worry about it? Aren't you still the person that was mentioned? Oh, yeah, no, but, it was a long time ago. And
it was different.
Yeah.
But every 7 years, your cells change. What? I'm not really the same person. Okay. What? It's true though. You're not the same person that you're born as, because your cells do die and are replaced with new cells. That's what cell copying is. That's called aging. That's how you eventually die. But Dave is right. Dave is completely correct when he says that it's now a feudal system. But a feudal system is not complete without the serfs. The serfs being the peasants, the people in the mud. If you've seen Holy Grail, then you know the people that live in the filth. That's us. We are the filth dwellers. All of us.
Oh, there's a lovely piece of filth over here.
Okay, so you must have, and you know what? A feudal system makes perfect sense also in the context of these pillars, the guidestones, the Georgia guidestones, I think they're called, stabilizing the population at 500 million. Yeah. You know what though? You can make that statement, and you can actually actively work towards that goal if you belong to the class of people, and all your people belong to the class of people, your friends, your family, that aren't affected by that. If you consider yourself in charge, if you're the person that has the money and the influence and makes the rules, whatever, and you think that the great unwashed, all of us, and I rub shoulders with them every day in my travels at work, they're superfluous. You don't really need that many of them. 500 million. There's probably 1 million, maybe 5 million of you, all the big, the big wigs, and then all you need is really 500 million. That's enough. The rest of the world can be a park, and then never you mind stepping foot on my parkland, I'll shoot you. I'll string you up if you go ahead and hunt my game illegally. Poacher. Dirty
I
poacher.
was given an example this week, Mackie, of what it would be like if we were living as a population of no more than 500 million. I think the term is retain the population at below 500 million on the Georgia Guidestones.
Yep.
And this is in Dubai when the king wants to go to the airport or watch the fireworks for that matter. The freeway is closed. The freeway. All the cars with their license plate between 1 and 100 are owned by the royal family. If you see them on the road, get off the road. It's their road. They own it. They set up tents on the freeway. They close it when they want to watch the fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
It's a freeway. Mind you, I heard a funny story that all the drains are just there for show. There is no drain below it, just a drain grate. And when it rains, it just floods anyway. But you've got to think about that. That's the same kind of thing that you would find in a royal family lineage where it was a feudal system, that they own everything. It is theirs. It isn't yours. Think about the way that China doesn't let anyone actually own anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't own it. Your family doesn't own it. Your house is there, sure, but you don't own the land. The government always owns the land. Which world would you like to be in?
Everywhere.
Well, you are right. You don't actually physically own it. You own the right to put the house on it.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it's something called imminent domain. Whatever the actual term is. The point is that the government can come along, and this is pretty much any country in the world, Western or otherwise, they can come and say, yeah, for the greater good, your stuff is now all mine. All of this is now mine. I'm taking it, and you know what? There's nothing you can do about it. You know what the answer to that is? There's nothing you can do about it.
That's right.
All of the stuff that is yours is in fact not yours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Legally, everything can be taken away from you.
Now, we don't want to get into an argument with Americans at all about these topics, because people can say they're a sovereign own land to themselves. That's fine. If you don't agree to join the sovereignty, I suggest that you probably don't want to do that. I've seen a lot of videos where people use that and it confuses the Border Patrol people. I wouldn't use it. I'd say, yes, sir. No, sir. How many bags? Do I jump on one leg? I'll bark like a dog. I don't care. Because we're on a treadmill and they have us working for them.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yes, that's how it works.
Yeah, don't upset the apple cart. Right? The apple cart's good. Mackie, getting back to this text, because we're never going to fit in. Yes. We're never even going to get to Viktor. Poppy would have become president if Reagan died. Poppy being George, is it W.H. Bush? Yeah, H.W. Bush. Let's call it George Bush Sr. Rather than waiting 8 long years, as he did, he had engaged in a bitter primary campaign against Reagan, who then surprised many people by taking Bush as his running mate. Enemies closer, maybe? Richard Nixon once asked by an aide why he took such an unappealing and unpopular figure as Spiro Agnew as his vice president. Reportedly answered, "Assassination insurance," he said. It's interesting to note that George H.W. Bush similarly chose Dan Quayle, a figure widely considered as a lightweight, ill-suited to the presidency, as his running mate. My guess, as a comment, is he's the handler.
Mm-hmm.
He was advised that he should go this direction. Mekki.
In any case, Reagan survived. Bush for a time served as de facto president, and after Reagan's resumption of power, Bush remained an astonishingly influential vice president, to many the real power in the country in many respects ever after. Around the time of the shooting of Kennedy in Dallas, the Hinkleys were operating out of Dallas, with offices in the Republic Bank building, a tower which housed many entities and individuals connected by varying degrees to intelligence activity, including the offices of the mysterious Russian Baron George de Mohrenschildt, an old friend of George H.W. Bush we just mentioned, who was perhaps the principal influence in the life of Lee Harvey Oswald in the year leading up to the shooting of Kennedy. In 1978, not long before Poppy Bush's presidential bid, his son George W. was making his first bid for elective office with donations from the Hinckley clan. Neil Bush was W's campaign manager living in the city of Lubbock. Another person living there at the time was John Hinckley Jr. Asked about that by a newspaper reporter, W commented that it was conceivable Neil would have met Hinckley during that period. As for himself, W said at the time, "It's certainly conceivable that I met him or might have been introduced to him. I don't recognize his face from the brief, kind of distorted thing they had on TV, and the name doesn't ring any bells. I know he wasn't on our staff. I could check our volunteer rolls. Now, I need to tell you something about W here. Now, he's not a very bright guy, as you might know. He did go to Yale, and he was a member of Skull and Bones. And do you know how he impressed the members of Skull and Bone? He never forgot a face or a name. He never forgot a face or a name. That's a personal trait that W has. That's what has been, I guess, his little secret of success. He would always come, shake your hand and greet you by name. And it's a very impressive skill to have. He would not forget a face or a name. Okay. Was there any follow-up? The article asks. Did Bush ever seek to learn more about Hinckley or explain what ways they were or were not acquainted? Not that the author can find. And then there's this. The very day that Reagan was shot, the Reagan-Bush Department of Energy notified the Hinckley family at Vanderbilt Oil that the government might be forced to penalize the family business to the tune of $2 million. April 1, 1981. Was Scott coming to dinner with Neil to try to sort it out? Whatever happened after John Hinckley shot Reagan, the penalty never materialized. Neil never did provide a more satisfying explanation of why the shooter's brother was coming to his house for dinner than that he was filling in as a date for a friend of his wife's. But who had suggested the dinner in the first place? And who had recommended Scott be one of the foursome? That remains murky. As for the shooter, here's what Neil said about whether he knew or had met him. I have no idea, he said. I don't recognize any pictures of him. I just wish I could see a better picture of him. Dave?
Do this is so extraordinary. In a memoir, Bush aide Chase Untermeyer, who accompanied Bush to the unveiling, writes, I washed up and went to bed for a nap before writing this entry. Around 1:30, I was awakened by a call from Art Weiss of the Houston Post. Art related the possibility that Neil Bush, the VP's son, may be acquainted with the alleged assailant, John W. Hinckley Jr. Neil and Sharon do know Hinckley's brother in Denver and were planning to have dinner with them tomorrow night. The Hinckley's are a prosperous family, and John Sr. may have been a Bush contributor. Art wanted to know if the connection was known by GB. As Art pointed out, even a slight Bush connection in this shooting could set off the conspiracy freaks. "What's up?" GB asked, seeing us all there. "Did you talk to Neil last night?" Pete asked as we entered the west basement. "No, it is about this guy." "Yes." "Jesus?" Or maybe Jesus? I don't know how that would be exclaimed. We all went to the VP's office, where Pete related the story that Weiss had been working on and which, being played big in Houston and over the wires, GB appeared only mildly concerned, so little in fact that he didn't think to call Barbara or ask of us to do so. So that's crazy. This should have been one of those most investigated, most heavily reported stories for years after, certainly in contrast to the email scandal, Benghazi, Travelgate, and other complex and somewhat esoteric matters that became media rages, lasting on and on, dominating the public conversation. This particular Hinckley matter, which by any measure passes all the tests for something worthy of interest by law enforcement, just vanished. Mickey.
Even when Neil Bush's involvement in the massive savings and loan collapses that dominated headlines in the 1980s was widely reported, no mention was made of the fascinating Bush-Hinckley connection. To sum it all up, bear with me, John W. Hinckley's brother attends a surprise birthday party at Neil Bush's house in a period when John Hinckley was suffering serious mental problems. The government exerts financial pressure on the Hinckley family's business. Hinckley shoots President Reagan, nearly making Neil Bush's father the president. The financial pressure on the Hinckley's disappears. George H.W. Bush is in charge of the investigation of the shooting. The Hinckleys chalk it all up to the son's demons. Everyone focuses on Jodie Foster, and that's the end of that. Coincidence? Sure. Anything, after all, is possible. Thank you very much, Ross Baker, for this very insightful article. We give you full credit. Again, we don't get paid for this, so I hope you're okay with us mentioning it on air. We're giving you full credit. We've put the link in our show notes as well, so people can read more of your stuff. Guys, this is this shouldn't be a surprise. Let me put it this way. It should not be a surprise. We know this stuff happens. There are no coincidences. If there appears to be a link, then there probably is a link. Okay?
It's probably also bigger than you expect it to be.
Yeah. And the more people benefit from a certain event, the more likely it is not to be a coincidence. The more likely it is to have been planned and executed with a certain level of professionalism, if you will. Okay, now, of course, I'm talking about 9/11, I'm talking about Port Arthur, I'm talking about a whole bunch of other things, Oklahoma City, the sinking of the Lusitania, it goes on and on. Even the burning down of Rome. There are always beneficiaries to these actions. There always are people that walk away with bags full of money. You know, if there's blood in the streets, buy real estate. That's that's a
that's an oldie but goodie, that one, isn't it? Truism, yes.
It is. So guys, it's now I'm sorry that we didn't get to talk about Viktor Schauberger yet. We will, of course, dedicate the next show cycle to Viktor. There's very little independently available on Viktor on the net and in research. Wikipedia has got 3 paragraphs on him, which I find fascinating. His life story is fascinating. We will go into that in some detail next week. But I think it was important, Dave, that we shared the Bush article with our audience because it is both. Number one, it's very relevant. Hinckley was just released, and it shows up. I mean, links to. I mean, look at this. I mean, MK Ultra is in here. Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, this is just a plethora of connections.
It has connections to everything, like an octopus.
Like an octopus. That's exactly right. So we hope that you find it illuminating. The Bushes clearly have been power players, I would say, since the late 19th century. So it's both the Walker and the Bush family that were connected in a marriage between the Walkers and the Bushes. Prescott, was one of I think was the first offspring. Those guys also worked for the Harriman brothers out of New York, who happened to be financiers to the Nazis. Oh, shock, horror. The Bushes are in bed with the Saudis massively. Yeah. In fact, specifically, the Bin Ladens. The Bushes are so deep in bed with the Bin Ladens, you can't even tell them apart anymore. In fact, the Bin Ladens also financed Arbusto Oil, which was Dabia's first commercial venture. It was financed by the Bin Laden family, believe it or not. And the only jet that was allowed to fly on September 12th
Bin Laden family
was the Bin Laden family exiting America rather rapidly. Okay. So again, do you want to go and say that in Central Park? Probably not. It's not a good idea. I did actually, Dave. I was going to mention this to you. I went to the memorial site.
Oh yes, in the 9/11 one.
Yeah, and so what they've done, they've built this, I guess, the Freedom Tower, which we went up to the top of, and I had lunch, and it's a beautiful view of pretty much all the boroughs, and as far as you can see, pretty much to the horizon. But the actual monument itself is more I guess they're 2 large pools, I guess, of water, and they're
representing the 2 towers
of the buildings. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where the 2 towers were, and the water is cascading down, and around the perimeter, you've got the names embossed in the actual structure of the people that were killed on that day, and you look at the size of the imprint or the footprint of the buildings. It's quite sizable. It's massive, right? And I'm not saying. It wasn't real to me before. Of course it was, but you go there and you're standing, and these 2 buildings are no longer here. The skyline has changed significantly. When we went to Hoboken on one of the days, we took a panoramic shot of Manhattan. And in my childhood, whenever I saw a view of Manhattan, there were the 2 towers, and then you take a panoramic shot. Now there are no 2 towers. I mean, it's the Freedom Tower. It's just the one structure, but clearly the silhouette or the skyline of Manhattan has changed dramatically, and it was security is high. You have to go through metal detectors and all kinds of things on the way up. It's a tourist thing, I guess, more or less, after so many years, and it's a reminder that nobody has actually really investigated any of this. This is the largest crime scene in the world, which is now a monument, which is, I think that's fair enough. But this was never properly investigated. And I don't think to this day we haven't got the people responsible for this identified and prosecuted. And when I say responsible also means if you let something happen. If it's in your power to stop something and you let it happen, that makes you complicit at the very least. Okay, at the very least. So this is just a reminder again that this crime, the biggest crime that was committed, in New York ever, I guess, or on American soil against that from both a death toll as well as a property damage point of view, was never probably closed. The case was never, in my opinion.
I share your opinion with it not being properly closed. I share your opinion because of offline that we would talk, and we've talked about this at length. And when you start to delve into it, and this is the thing that I think people miss when they just clearly tell us that we're conspiracy nuts, and and I'm labelled as crazy by my boss at work. He thinks it's really funny that I talk about this, and he says, "Oh, I know what you believe," and I really think, maybe you don't. And that is that from a crime scene perspective, those pieces of evidence, the crucial pieces of evidence, were destroyed. All destroyed, quicker than they could assemble a group of people to examine it. That isn't a usual thing that occurs with a crime scene. Yeah, because the reason, Meki, I think it is because they already declared the whole thing already by the media. The media, Meki, not even the government. Oh, yeah, it was Iraqis, it was Al-Qaeda, yeah, so there you go. Bin Laden, he's the one responsible. How on earth did they know before the government knew? How could they declare that on the same day? Because it was scripted.
Of course it was.
It was scripted. You got to remember that.
There's a lot more evidence though that has come to light in recent times, and I don't know if we can do a show on this or not, because I'm torn. Because this freaks me out in the same way that Paul Arthur freaks me out. That the actual event was like there were no planes at all. That's what's being put forward now as a theory. Mm-hmm. These were all some kind of cruise missile that were hit, and a lot of, in fact, primed with explosives beforehand, and all these wonderful things. So this is will it come out? Yes, in 100 years' time, everything will be released. Maybe heavily redacted documents. Maybe the perpetrators will be dead. Who knows? The thing is this: if Hitler hadn't lost the war, the burning of the Reichstag, the German parliament, that he blamed on the communists, that would have been the story. To today. Till today, that would have been the story. Okay, so...
Would we have found out about the radio station?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Because remember, the winners... The winners rewrite history.
Yeah.
They change history because there's right now the Vietnam Memorial. We were denied our commemorations of those who fought in it over in Vietnam. Terrible thing to have occurred, right? But when you think about this, thanks Jerbear too, by the way. When you think about the winners changing history, the winners rewrite it so it benefits them.
Completely.
And they reduce it down by all their failures. Their failures don't exist. It was only the successes, and they change what was a success. And we know about this because of Japan. Japan spoke about a whole bunch of things, and their history has a different history. So does Germany. So does England. Even though we're on the same side, we do we big up some of the things that maybe we shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And of course, it only, and once again, yes, Meki, once again, you only find out way past the deadline, at the 20th printing of the history books, when someone's allowed to print it.
Yeah. The thing is this, right? People talk about the Holocaust in Turkey against the Armenians. Some people do. Nobody really talks about the fact that the British invented the concentration camps, or the things the Belgians did in the Congo, how the French treated the North Africans, whatever. I mean,
the Americans in locking up the the Japanese during the Second World War.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, let's not even mention the First Nation people of America, right? All the tribes that existed well before the first white settlers came along.
And Australia
again, it's no longer it's not relevant because the the survivors or the winners, the victors, write the history books, and it makes the thing is this. The funny thing is this, and I understand where these Holocaust deniers come from as well. Not that I'm one, because I've got too much historical knowledge, I guess. But I understand what they're saying. If there was no Holocaust, they would have had to invent it to justify the massive loss of life of World War II. But I believe there was, so don't misquote me. I do believe the Holocaust happened. Guys.
Yeah, me too.
I know survivors. In fact, my folks almost ended up in Auschwitz.
Wow.
Anyway, donate if you can.
There's the music. We'll see you next week for 235. Can't believe we're getting up into the middle of the 200s. My goodness. Stay tuned for a round table with Jer Bear. Take care, everyone. Bye.